They retreated. But this isn't the first time that the regressive left has created content for perverts with a pedophilic appetite.
And she was just standing there watching me, and I remember looking up and just seeing her and just going, wow, she's beautiful. I knew I was in deep. I had fallen for the girl. The last thing I wanted to do was hurt her.
That clip was recently published in Salon, a website that focuses on current affairs from a seriously left-leaning perspective. The piece, titled "I'm Not a Monster, a Pedophile on Attraction, Love, and a Life of Loneliness," profiles an outed pedophile, Todd Nickerson. Now, in it, the 43-year-old claims that he's never abused a child and never will, despite his impulses to do so. Now, if you have a kid in the room, I suggest asking them to leave. Otherwise, I want you to watch this depraved freak articulate his sexual attraction to one 5-year-old kid.
I took on a regular babysitting gig. She was 5. She was a precocious girl. She was advanced for her age. She was also very independent. A lot of my fantasies actually revolve around little girls who are in some way more powerful than I am. Eventually, my attraction became, overwhelming to the point I had to go relieve myself in the bathroom. That's when I had to leave town and get my head straightened out. I didn't abuse her because I knew the harm that it could cause.
Now, I can't be sure, but I'm fairly certain that what Salon hopes to achieve is sympathy for the pedophile in their interview, with the ultimate goal of normalizing the disorder. Don't believe me? Here's another part of that same interview.
Society makes it harder by persecuting us because a lot of us become fatalistic. We just start to think it doesn't matter what we do or say, they're going to hate us anyway. We need to find some kind of middle ground where society and pedophiles can come together. We love kids, we want to protect them too.
Mr. Nickerson is right. Society does make it hard for pedophiles, for a good reason. Children are innocent and vulnerable beings, incapable of sexual consent with an adult. And those who find kids sexually attractive should never be encouraged to relish in their fantasies, except maybe in the presence of an authority like a psychiatrist who wants to put a stop to their abnormal and abhorrent fetish. And yet, instances of leftist publications standing up for pedophiles seems to be on the upswing. I'm serious. It wasn't too long ago that Canada's own Toronto Star profiled a doctor from the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. His claim is that pedophilia is just another sexual orientation, deep-rooted and unchangeable. And even more recently, Canada's state broadcaster, the left-leaning CBC, ran a documentary titled "I, Pedophile." The flick documents so-called misconceptions about pedophiles, such as those you see here, including the fact that pedophiles are, quote, not attracted to all children. In one part, the documentary discusses the case of Bob, who discovered he was attracted exclusively to boys between 7 and 11 years of age. Apparently, kids below 6 and above 12 aren't on his radar, and I don't know, are we supposed to somehow feel safer knowing this?
So, this is a tough video for me to make as a man who has sex with other men. It is very tiresome to constantly have to debunk the idea that the progressive LGBT plus equality movement is sympathetic in the modern age to pedophiles or pederasty. There was a period in history a long time ago, after Stonewall, 1969 maybe to 1975, where the very fringes, the most radical ends of the LGBT movement were tolerant of NAMBLA's existence, the National Association for Man-Boy Love. National Alliance for Man-Boy Love? It's fine, it's regardless. The point is that these guys were activist pedophiles. And activist pedophiles have always attempted to expand, to step in behind the progress that homosexuals make in terms of tolerance. They've always tried to kind of Me Too behind gay rights. And now there's this narrative I can't believe. Recently, Blair White did a video where she talked about calling out pedophilia on YouTube, people who are openly advocating for pedophilia, and I was like, okay, finally a video that I can watch that, we can all agree that these people are completely odious and they're not on anyone's side, a tertiary antagonist, and she failed. She failed because she had to, and Jeff Holiday also in his video on his second channel, I think it was, responding to a quote unquote minor attracted person, conflated pedophilia, sympathy and tolerance for pedophilia with the social justice community. And I think there are a couple of factors giving people that impression. And the rebel media also, it's probably the most intense proponent of this idea that the regressive left is proposing and using gay rights as a banner, an infinitely expanding banner to eventually include pederasty and pedophilia. I consider myself queer or pansexual, whichever one you want to pick. I prefer the sexual company of men, but I've had partners who are female and trans women and trans men, so I guess pansexual is the most a technically accurate term, but I prefer to use queer because I do prefer men. And I remember when I first came out, having come from a Christian family and a Christian community and a Catholic school, one of the earliest questions I got was, is this related to pederasty? Are you dating boys? And I think these people were not necessarily asking about pedophilia, but they were asking if I was attracted to teenage boys, because I prefer a more femme or twink gay man myself for a companion. And that's, I think, what provoked the question was like, well, if you're into twinks, is that like an indicator that you have an eye for boys, for post-pubescent boys? No, not at all. Would you ask a straight person because they are into some kind of like a schoolgirl fetish if they're pedophiles? It's the cheerleader thing. It's funny how straight people don't get asked these questions about like the slippery slope of sexual morality. You know what I mean? They're always allowed to fantasize on a wide plane. And people give them the benefit of the doubt. I've always mentioned on this channel that privilege is about people getting the benefit of the doubt. And I think that when straight people indulge their kinks, they're given a little more leeway than queer or gay people get. I think because there's still sort of an aura, as far as we've come, even with now in the United States, gay marriage being legal in every state at the moment, I think that there's still kind of this tinge from the straight community that somehow homosexuality is a portal to infinite kink, which, it's pretty absurd. The law is the law. You know what I mean? I'm so disappointed that in 2017 there are people who have massive platforms like the Rebel Media, like Blair White, and unfortunately, and people have the opportunity to respond to this video and clarify. But I do remember Jeff Holiday at the beginning of his response to the minor attracted person saying that there were people in the social justice community pushing for pedophilia acceptance, and I don't see any evidence of that. I'm not going to take articles by Salon.com or Huffington Post just featuring people talking about their feelings of attraction to children as an endorsement any more than Roaming Millennial allowing Richard Spencer to speak, which I'm, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of that, but, you can't be a free speech absolutist and then say that pedophiles can't talk about their feelings publicly. It's just speech, right? Like, speech is harmless. So I don't understand why all of a sudden people who had no upward limit on free speech, including white nationalists, advocating cultural or literal genocide against non-whites, suddenly now have reached the limits of their tolerance with people articulating these feelings that they struggle with, and advocate. Communicating and advocating are not the same thing. Meaning, I think there's some value in listening to people who are not active pedophiles and trying to understand how to help them by them relating their feelings and their struggles. I think that we should give them an ear, a compassionate ear. I don't think that we should give a platform to people who advocate the legalization of having sex with children. And I just don't see a couple of articles in a few center-left websites that are just giving people an opportunity to speak about their daily struggle with an attraction to children, the same thing as endorsing the movement to legalize sex with minors. It's just not the same thing, and it goes against this sort of limitless free speech principle that the people that I've cited, the Rebel Media, Jeff Holiday, and Blair White, have talked about letting everybody speak, including Nazis. But they just hit their ick factor. They just hit the point where they're too repulsed to let that person talk. And again, I'm not saying that, look, I'm the hate speech guy. I'm the guy who thinks that a lot of different forms of speech are actually dangerous. I think that it should be illegal to advocate for the rights of pedophiles. It should be illegal to advocate publicly for lowering the age of consent. People should be censured, fined, and, potentially imprisoned if they are platforming for the legalization of sex with children. Full stop. But I don't think that a compassionate society would not listen at all to someone expressing pain and struggle with a problem, someone who genuinely wanted help. And if they wanted to anonymously articulate these feelings so that we at large can understand what those people are struggling with day to day to not become active pedophiles. I don't think that we should persecute media outlets for trying to understand any more than we should persecute a media outlet that was trying to understand someone who was not an active cannibal and the weird feelings around that, or, someone who was a latent racist and felt some kind of guilt and wanted to talk about how they came to be, like ex-Nazis. They give us valuable insight into what leads a person down that path. And when we understand people and we understand what leads them to these dangerous and toxic and harmful behaviors, we can address a social problem. Because pedophilia is a social problem. The abuse and exploitation of children is a social problem. And just like all social problems, in order to confront perpetrators or potential perpetrators, we need to kind of understand what's going on inside their head in order to best treat the issue at the root, rather than to address the symptom too late when it's already been acted upon. People should be aware of what's going on inside the heads of those people. But like I said, I do not know anyone in the mainstream social justice community that supports the rights of pedophiles to advocate for their lifestyle being legalized in any sense. And I don't see any evidence. And again, this is not a call-out video about denigrating people's reputations or anything like that. If you have evidence of somebody in the mainstream social justice community advocating for the rights of pedophiles, please present it. But don't take things like mushy, undefined stuff and call it advocacy. You know what I mean? You could take anything. You could take any vague shit. And especially what seems to be giving the impression that social justice supports pedophiles is the fact that pedophiles have adopted politically correct language for their lifestyle. Anybody can do that. Richard Spencer has adapted politically correct language for being a fucking Nazi. So, transforming the already technical, relatively neutral term pedophile into minor attracted person is not something that the social justice community is culpable for. And even if you do abide by the term, if someone says to me, can you use my term? Right? Someone's like, they're a pedophile and they want to identify as a minor attracted person. That's a technically accurate description. I'm not in solidarity with their cause. I'm just referring to them as they would prefer to be called. And if you have a problem with that, remember that you want me to be polite to Richard Spencer and call him a white nationalist, and he's not a white supremacist, and he's not a Nazi. So please, if you believe in absolute free speech, believe in absolute free speech. If you have some kind of limit, then get on the boat with me, and let's talk about what kind of speech is going to be legal and illegal in this new tolerant utopia.